President Biden's Department of Justice appears to be taking every step to insulate him from the consequences, whether it's hiding these audio recordings or attempting to give Hunter Biden a sweetheart plea deal to shield Joe Biden from facing accountability for his role in his family's influence peddling schemes. This is unacceptable. The House of Representatives cannot serve as a necessary check on the presidency if the executive branch is free to ignore the House's subpoenas.
Our colleagues invite us today to become the first Congress in the history of the United States to hold someone in contempt for complying with our demands. And their target is the Attorney General of the United States. Remember, they promised to reveal the greatest presidential high crime and misdemeanor in American history, an act of treachery and deceit that dwarfs even the incitement of a violent mob insurrection and an attempted political coup that took place right here against our Constitution, our Congress, our Vice President in this chamber. But after their truly prodigious investigation, punctuated, admittedly, by some unfortunate mishaps like Chinese spies, fake evidence, pornographic displays in committee, and their own witnesses testifying that there were no grounds for presidential impeachment, they have nothing to show for their arduous work other than one more debunked Russian disinformation operation and one more indicted GOP informant and star witness. Rather than admit defeat in this bumbling operation and look for some other way to actually aid the public good, they've decided to flail about in mock outrage against a series of phantom tyrants in the hopes of distracting everyone from this epic flop.
This is not a complicated matter. The Oversight and Judiciary Committees issued duly authorized legal subpoenas to Attorney General Gralnd for a certain set of documents, including the audio recordings of Special Counsel Hur's interview with President Biden. The Attorney General has refused to produce these audio recordings. Unlike what my Democratic colleagues keep claiming, this is not just Republicans who need these recordings for their oversight duties. Media outlets, including the AP, CBS, CNN, NBC, and the Washington Post, among others, have filed suit to get these same audio recordings as well. Because the media, like everyone else, knows there's no substitute for a recording of an interview. Not a transcript, not a summary, not the Attorney General's judgment that Congress doesn't need it.
Attorney General Gralnd gave us the special counsel's report on President Biden in full. He made the special counsel available to us in committee for hours of testimony where he answered all our questions, and he provided the full transcript of the president's voluntary 5-hour interview with the special counsel, all 250 pages of it. The whole world can read President Biden's interview and his answers unedited. But that's apparently not enough. Now they want to hold the Attorney General in contempt for not turning over the audio tape of the interview that we have the verbatim transcript of. And why is that important? Well, in case you've lost the thread of this madcap wild goose chase, America, remember this is an impeachment investigation. Do they think that the Holy Grail of the 118th Congress, evidence of a presidential high crime and misdemeanor, is lurking in the pauses or the background throat clearings and sneezes on the audio tape? Well, of course not. They know there's no high crime or misdemeanor to be found because they've spent the last 17 months and millions of our taxpayer dollars looking for it, and it simply does not exist. They literally don't even know what they're looking for anymore. So why do they want it? Well, they're hoping that in the 5 hours of President Biden's testimony, they can find a mispronounced word or phrase or a brief stammer, which they can then turn into an embarrassing political TV attack ad. Get it, America? That's what this is all about. And holding the Attorney General of the United States in contempt is one more useful distraction from the complete and devastating implosion of the Biden impeachment probe, which of course was the #1 priority of these talented leaders. Their first distraction was to impeach Secretary Ali Mayorkas as a paltry consolation prize, but that pathetic decoy action blew up in their hands. Then the plan was to skip the mundane work of casting votes and actually doing committee business, to travel on a collective spiritual pilgrimage on Amtrak to New York City to attend the criminal trial of an unmentionable American felon, one of 19 million in the country. But that strange journey to Mecca also blew up in their faces when this mystery political false prophet was convicted unanimously by a jury of his peers on dozens of felony criminal counts in a fair American trial. They tried to salvage the credibility of this bizarre expedition by blaming the American justice system for being weaponized against Republicans. But this political extremism quickly melted away when the son of President Biden, the original target of their wrath, was also prosecuted and convicted, like another disarmed felon whose name may now not be spoken on the floor, apparently, by a unanimous jury of his peers on all counts against him. And that trial, unlike the trial whose very existence must be sent down the Orwellian memory hole to save someone hurt feelings, was actually tried in the federal system. So what's left to do now? Well, let's hold the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, in contempt, of course. This will be sure to placate an unrepentant and anonymous convicted felon from New York and distract everybody else for a day or two. I confess it's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, to be asked to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress for overwhelmingly complying with the committee's demands by members who voted against contempt citations for Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, two persons subpoenaed by the January 6th Select Committee who never spent a single minute. Could I have one more?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I grant the gentleman an additional minute.
Bannon and Navarro never spent a minute with the January 6th committee, never turned over a single document to our committee. These people had 0% compliance with Congress. They demonstrated true contempt, which is why they've been sentenced to jail. But Chairman Comer, in his wisdom, would hold the Attorney General of the United States of America in contempt for what I think is 100% compliance, but in any event is something like 98 or 99% compliance. If you think a federal official has not rendered proper compliance, you take them to court, you don't hold them in contempt, and it's rich beyond measure, like a billionaire rich, to be asked to hold the Attorney General in contempt by people who themselves received subpoenas to testify before the January 6th committee, who never rendered a single document nor a single minute of testimony to the January 6th committee. I urge Congress to reject this absurd motion, and I'm happy to yield back to the chairman.
Mr. Speaker, this contempt resolution is the latest attempt to tear down our democracy. The Department of Justice has cooperated with congressional Republicans at every turn. But after 92,000 pages of documents, more than a dozen transcribed interviews, and a 250-page transcript that was verified, my colleagues still aren't satisfied. They are doing this in service of one man, the disgraced former president, in a misguided attempt to distract from his crimes. On May 30th, a jury of stranger citizens found Mr. Trump guilty of 34 felony charges. It is beyond disheartening that a former president and now potential presidential candidate again was convicted of coordinating a, quote, unlawful conspiracy to win in the 2016 election and falsifying records to cover his tryst with an adult porn star. I'm grateful that the rule of law prevailed, yet I am deeply concerned that our democratic institutions are under threat. Some of these attacks coming from within. Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan said a kangaroo court convicted President Trump. Speaker Johnson called the trial a purely political exercise. Mr. Trump apparently pities himself as a so-called political prisoner. All this to tear down our Americans' faith in the rule of law. Contrary to his complaints, Mr. Trump was tried and treated fairly. Justice was served in a courtroom that was open and filled with reporters, and a jury that was chosen by the prosecution and the defense. This is the rule of law at work. Political rhetoric and deliberate misinformation, the likes of these and dangerous many others, erode faith in our institutions and threaten the safety of the American people. These attacks undermine the rule of law, which stands to protect the rights of all people. When Attorney General Merrick Gralnd was before the Judiciary Committee,
Speaker, I yield the gentlelady an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. When Attorney General was before the Judiciary Committee, he described his career upholding the rule of law. In his own words, that meant ensuring that, quote, we treat like cases alike, that we do not have enemies or friends, that we do not pay attention to the political parties or the wealth or the power or the influence of the people we are investigating, that we follow the facts and the law. This is what distinguishes America from our adversaries. I yield back.